Kathryn Ritchie has got an amazing story. It's, in a lot of ways, it's a very sad story, but in every adversity, there's a seed of equal or greater benefit. Kathryn, why don't you tell us about your life and what happened to you?
When I was 18 years old, my family was working in Moscow, Russia. We were missionaries there. And one morning we worked in an orphanage. And one morning we needed more soap for the orphanage. So a bunch of us, including my sister, and I went across the street to the bus stop to take the bus to downtown Moscow to buy soap. Well, one minute I was just standing there and looking at my bus ticket, making sure it hadn't expired. And that's the last thing I remember, because at that moment, a drunk driver sped down the road and drove into the bus stop and hit my sister and me and then drove off. And my sister died immediately, and I almost died. I went through a ton of physical issues. I could go on and on about those, but over the coming years, while I was in intensive care and a trauma hospital and learned to walk again after a couple years, and had a lot of deals with broken bones and that type of thing. But at the same time, I was not feeling well. I had no energy. I was awake in the middle of the night, but I could hardly move. By evening, I was losing weight, which everyone said, "Oh, that's so wonderful. It's so great that you're skinny." But if you've ever struggled with losing weight, it's not a good thing. I almost lost my job. I worked at a church in South Florida, and I was in women's ministries. I was a counselor. I almost lost my job because my boss thought I had an eating disorder, and how could I be counseling girls that really did have eating disorders if I had one too? But I didn't. And I worked in Washington, D.C. for a few years for a congressman, and during that time I had great insurance, government insurance, so I went all over the place. I went to Georgetown Hospital, I went to all kinds of doctors. I stopped counting at 50. I've been to many, many more doctors.
How many?
50, 50, and I stopped counting at that point. And I went to Mayo Clinic, because at that point, doctors were saying I would never have children. I was in menopause. I hadn't had a period for ages. I was still in my 20s, and the doctors just kept saying, "Well, take estrogen," or, "Oh, I think you have a psychological problem." I was having trouble breathing. I was getting asthma, and I didn't know why. "Well, it's just a psychological problem. You probably never dealt with your sister dying, or you're afraid of being underwater," because I tried to go swimming and I couldn't breathe. So my husband at the time, well, before we got married, said, "Oh, the doctors couldn't really be saying those things." And then when he went with me to Mayo, he said, "I can't believe it. They really do think you're crazy." I was so discouraged. I went to go speak at a conference in Oklahoma in 2010. And at that time, my dad had told me about Hotze. He had seen it in an airline magazine. And I said, I've even been to Mexico to get help. I don't want to spend any more money. I don't want to go to any more doctors. And I've just given up. The doctors say I'm losing bone density. I'm going into menopause. And we're adopting. And we were already looking at adopting from Poland, and that's it. But at this conference, I almost passed out right before I gave my testimony. And my husband just happened to, right then, we were living in South Florida, but he happened to be in Houston working before we moved here. And he said, after you speak, you're getting on an airplane and you're going to Houston and we're going to Dr. Hotze. So I said, okay, fine. And I just expected for y'all to think I was crazy and give me more estrogen or tell me I needed some kind of psychological whateverness. And it was totally different experience, as you've already heard. I've gained 20 pounds back. I sleep great. I didn't just become pregnant one time. I don't know if you can see this picture. I have 3 children. He just turned 4, and he asked me if he could learn how to drive the other day. This is my daughter, who actually also is a guest of the Hotze Clinic. She's 2, and then that's Edmund, who's 7 months and just figured out how to crawl. So that's a little bit about my testimony.
Now, that's an amazing story, isn't it? So the doctors had told you you would never be able to have a pregnancy.
That's right.
So she'd seen 50 doctors, even went to the Mayo Clinic. Now, can we be that much smarter than the Mayo Clinic?
Yes.
Well, I think we obviously, we did something right here. I like to tell women that are infertile, the most common cause of infertility is hypothyroidism. And so if a woman can't get pregnant or can't maintain a pregnancy, it's usually hypothyroidism, and they may need a little progesterone on top of that. So when Kathy came in, we told her, don't blame us now. If when we balance your hormones, you get pregnant. And sure enough, she did. And then she happened to win a prize and went to the Broadmoor Hotel. And what happened, that was after, you saw Tanya Gorka's, the video up there. Well, a few years ago, we had a video presentation. We let people do their own videos and send them in, and then we had all the guests vote on who was the best video, and Kathryn did a video, and she ended up winning the video. So because she had little Nicholas, and it was a wonderful story, and they voted for her and so the prize was you got to go to the Broadmoor Hotel in the Colorado Springs. And so you went, and tell us what happened at the Broadmoor.
Well, first, that was an amazing opportunity because my honeymoon, I was so ill that I was actually in urgent care before the wedding. And then during the honeymoon, I was in bed all week, but not why you'd normally be in bed. I was so sick. I hardly remember it. It's this awful blur. So I had always just felt really sad because of how I was on my honeymoon. And then when we went to the Broadmoor, it was like God gave us not only my health back, but this little gift of being able to celebrate our marriage again. It was so amazing. But by the second day, I was very nauseated. And my husband kept saying, oh, you have mountain sickness, you're dehydrated, drink more water. And I kept drinking water, and I kept throwing up. So that's when we found out about Lizzie.
Kathryn, thank you, and God bless you. Appreciate it.